blowing phoneh does not mean you're communicating. It doesn't. You need to learn to speak properly because, the cultural nuance of your new country is entirely different from where you're coming. Like, it's different. The way things are said, the unsaid things, the things that are people mean in between the lines. But I feel like people focus more on learning to speak with the accent instead of learning to understand what people are really saying when they say something. And I think that's what Beyond Text talk a lot about that here, about, how cultural nuances, communicating, trying to understand the culture, not saying, oh, I can speak like them. Like, yeah. You should listen to this episode. Don't turn it off. Just stay here. Just hold on. It's starting now. See you on the other side. The first thing we're talking about, like we're talking the pre-show, was it's the question I really want to ask is, what was it like to move when you did? But you were telling me something about you'd done this 2 times. Yeah, so
yeah, so I had done this 2 times. I had come in 2007. I did a master's. I worked for like 2 years after or so. Went back to Nigeria. And then I came back again. And this time I knew I was coming for a much longer stint. And I think we're here for here now. In 2016. I suppose my story is kind of different because from that first time that we came, I already had indefinite leave to remain in the UK. If I'd stayed one more year then, I'll have collected my passport since then. But Africa was rising, Nigeria was rising. Nigeria was rising. No, I said, let's go back and rise with it.
This thing you just said, because I was about to ask you, but why you came back. But I also remember that then there was this massive PR about
it was
Africa is rising, and all that.
Let me shock you. Within 6-7 months of moving back, was this stock market burst? The bubble in the stock market burst. Everything just resets, and Africa hasn't really been rising since then.
Gosh.
But, yeah.
I don't even know what the answer is, but I mean, I guess like that's something for another day. I want to kind of explore. So, how was it for you? Like, so you came the first time to study, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, were there any differences in how it was for you? When you came that first time, hey, I'm here to study. I'm going to stay 2 years after, and then when you now came back the second time, like, okay, I am here. I'm here for life. Were there any differences in how you were settling in? Just adjusting back and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I just got married when I came to do a master's, but my wife had been here. She'd come to school here, so I can really back and tell you that my wife and I went to the same secondary school. We knew each other from secondary school. Anyway, but so she came here after secondary school. We got together, got married. I came here to do a master's, and I'd only been working for about 2 or 3 years then, so I think perhaps being less experienced as a professional, and the society societies are always evolving, and this was, I think, at the early stage of its beginning to accept professionals from different parts of the world. So I want to say it didn't feel as welcoming then in phase 1 as it did in phase 2. But I was also like a more established person professionally, more sure of myself, more confident in my dealings with anybody from anywhere, probably slightly thicker skinned. So maybe that also contributed to, not really caring the second time around. But I will admit that between that 2009 2010 period when we went back to Nigeria and then coming back again 2016 2017, in the context of British society and how I felt or what I felt my place was in it, there definitely was a difference.
So, and we'll stay on this topic a bit because I like what you say
Yeah, sure.
about how society evolves over time. And I feel like that's happened to both societies in the West where immigration wasn't a big thing. Like, it feels like immigration has become a big thing in the past 5, 6, 7 years. Like, it's become a conversation. It's become a global conversation. Like, oh, people are moving. I mean, people have always
Yeah.
moved, but I don't understand why it has suddenly become like a PR thing in a way. But what I'm curious about so could you describe some of the cultural nuances you faced that first time that made you say it felt a bit unwelcoming at that point? And while you're describing that, let's also explore, was it a function of text at that point you didn't really understand the culture? Or was it a function of the culture didn't understand text? Or was it a function of text and the culture needed to kind of make 2-3 steps forward to?
I think it was probably a mixture of both. So first time around, I guess it wasn't. It's a good question you've asked. I'm trying to, gather my thoughts to answer properly. The first time around, it felt not as welcoming because so it was around the time that I think there was an influx of Eastern Europeans into the UK. So there was, I think that was the start of, in my reckoning anyway, the start of British society suddenly talking about it all the time. I mean, if you dig deep into it, they'll tell you that since Windrush time, when people came from the Caribbean and East Asia and Africa, that there'd always been some hostility, but it seemed like people got on a bit more. Then there was that influx of Eastern Europeans who were then, and British society is structured in a way that yes, people go to uni, but lots of people are in the trades as well. Your plumber, your electrician,
Yes.
and and in fact, I suspect probably more people are in the trades. I don't have the data. Maybe I shouldn't. But anyway, there was that pushback against they're coming, they're taking our work. That time, if you watch South Park, which makes me think it wasn't even like strictly a British or European thing. There was that episode as well. And they're coming in our country. They took the jobs. That's so. But I guess to localize it to me, I just felt that everything, and maybe I was too sensitive to it at the time. Everything on the news and on the radio and it was immigration, and maybe because I was still in the process of regularizing but I was never like on the wrong side of it. Once I finished school, I had that freedom to work as I liked. And I think my wife became a citizen the year we moved back the first time. So it was always just a matter of time. But I just didn't really feel like I was in a place where I felt comfortable in my skin. Professionally, that was a problem as well because I had gone to I'm a lawyer by profession. Done my law
Yeah.
school, worked for 2 or 3 years, worked in a nice, sexy Lagos law firm. Like I was not too far from the top of the food chain. Yes, I was a new lawyer, but pay my dues, stay in the zone that I'm in, and things will just progress. It didn't matter one bit here that this guy was a lawyer from a different, okay, yes, it is a different jurisdiction, so you have to go back to their own law school and do their own exams. Done that now. And I just done a master's, so that our Nigeria sense, you lawyer, you don't do masters. And then you're putting your CV out and you don't have experience. And then you lower your standards a bit, you don't have experience. Like, There's an admin job self that I put application for, just to get, like, you don't have experience. Like, what experience do I need to do this? You admin, you know. So I feel
Gosh.
there was that indignation that, man, these guys should get lost. Okay, we see their country itself. So all this book I don't read now,
Yeah.
is to be hustling backwards. So there was a bit of that, and then Africa was rising anyway. So the alternative, go back to where
Became.
I'm a bigger fish. Then
Mm-hmm,
seemed
mm-hmm.
attractive. This time around, so I moved back, and there's an interesting story about how I moved back. But I moved back on the day of the Brexit vote. So,
Huh?
yep, yep. So immigration was also very high on the agenda. Then,
Yeah,
Farage
yeah. Oh,
was
yeah.
cooking his thing. In fact, the whole point of Brexit was this Eastern European crisis in British society. So, Theresa May has started this hostile environment thing when she was Home Secretary. So it was all just, it wasn't like I came into a friendlier, immigration atmosphere. But friends and colleagues that didn't go back when Africa was rising had progressed in all their professions. They had bought houses. They were balanced. All the check boxes of when I'm moving to a different country, you want to do this certification, you want to tick off some life
Mm.
milestones. They done all that. Um, the work that I saw my peers doing phase at that beginning of phase two compared to that time, everybody was just trying to get into project management because that was the big thing to just be
Easiest
comfortable.
thing.
But people were coming as doctors, people were coming as lawyers, people were coming as accountants. Like, you weren't being boxed into that do project management or drive a bus life of the mid 2000s is, I suppose, the shortest description I can give for how I felt, things had evolved a bit,
Mm. Yeah, it's always interesting because I mean I feel like that's the same here because I know someone said to me that, but give or take, if I had moved to Canada like 5 years back, like it wasn't, things are much better right now. It's like
Uh,
country has evolved. People are more open to the conversation of can you hire an immigrant, or like, the work culture is more accepting. I mean, we still have the
yes.
Canadian experience thing, which is probably what you're talking about, like, oh, do you have Canadian experience?
Yeah.
Which still happens every now and then. But at least you even see provinces that are saying, hey, no, you cannot ask someone if they have Canadian
Who's
experience. It's illegal to ask that question.
Oh, that's
So like for
interesting.
me, like that's a massive jump itself. And just like if legalese starts to, if you start having that in legalese across the country, then it means that the country is actually, it's actually making its own move. So just kind of still staying on that and just moving forward a bit is, so immigrants, I feel like there's something that happens, and I saw that I think we kind of talked about this a bit on Twitter. It was a conversation and all that. This thing about moving to a new country, you know, how to communicate, tone, expectations, work culture, and
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like people take the trauma from their past work culture and bring it to the new work culture. Just all those things. The fact that
Yeah.
how work is approached here is very different. I
Yeah.
feel like it's something that immigrants don't talk about. We kind of gloss over it, but it's a problem because either some people kind of get on with the game, some people are just faster than others, some people just complain and they keep changing jobs over and over again.
Yeah.
Like any thoughts, like yeah, just any thoughts on that and stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's absolutely valid. So we all speak English. We speak English fluently, but there's no doubt that we speak English differently from each other. The way we express ourselves, the way we gather our thoughts, the things that we would say with levity. I mean, so in our first time, my wife got a new job, and she was still on probation. And as she describes it, it was office banter going on. She's like, ah, that's stupid, Joe. You know, as Nigeria, you say that's stupid is silly. It's like that doesn't make sense. Our in her appraisal, they refer to that incident, and she was like, but it was office banter. And this was the context in which I said it, and when you explain it like that, obviously it makes sense. But if someone who wasn't there, who speaks the language in the code of everyone else in the office, there's a way they interpret it. So there's definitely a need to code switch, or to learn how to code switch. And this is not a phoneh thing now. It's just certain words just have different connotations. Expressions have different connotations, and you just have to take time. So the way Nigerian people talk, we can be very forceful. It's like how we go and drink beer in any beer parlor in Nigeria now. Friday evening, men are drinking. They are yelling at. They are not fighting, no. But you know how we are yelling at each other, and we are dismissing what. That's how we argue. You dismiss what the person is saying. In fact, you dismiss the person first before you start. And putting whether that's good or bad aside, it's just not the way that other people do their own banter or do their own, football gist of their own hanging out. So there was that. And then so my own personal experience, you always have to learn your boss, but and that's universal. Like anywhere you work, you need to learn your boss and learn to manage your boss. But here, the English culture, when your oga says he's suggesting something or she's suggesting something, when I first came, even this phase 2, I thought, if you're suggesting it, you're telling me, okay, this is just what you feel, but me, I still going to use my church mind, decide, and I very, very quickly learned that suggest is not suggestion like me and you would use suggestion. It is very if your guy suggests, just that's the direction. That's politely told you what to do. And then there's so even in Nigeria, like that code switching exists too. I need to say this carefully because I'm not trying to make a classist comment, but there is a way that some Nigerians, depending on which schools they went to or how they were raised,
yes.
There are some expressions that even in Nigerian society, or even in other pockets of Nigerian society, would be deemed offensive or aggressive. I don't know what the fix for that is, but I feel like those people are the ones that, when they land, struggle more with the tones, in their emails. So, and then it can maybe because it's just so professional training. Like, if you work in a lawyer's office, in the kind of offices I worked, and even in the in-house teams I worked in, an email of just 2 or 3 paragraphs can take 2 or 3 hours to write because words have meanings, right? You need to make sure what you're saying, 1, is clear. 2, you're not mistakenly insulting someone. If you want to insult, be clear that you want to insult, and don't do it mistakenly. And 3, just more importantly than even that one is being able to communicate dispassionately. So you can piss me, I can really be pissed, or you could have done something that made me really, really, really mad. But when in a professional setting, when I'm responding to you, I can say all the things I need to say to you about what you said. So here's what you did. Here's why it was offensive. Here is why I'm not going to accept it, and here's how I think we can move forward. You can be forceful and dispassionate, but and yeah, even Nigerian lawyers are guilty of this. So in some other law firms, when they ask you to write a letter, if you don't make it bombastic, if you don't make it, you have to write it strongly worded. If you don't make it strongly worded, your guy can, well, so I don't know what the fix for it is, but yeah, people do need to be conscious about tone. So I want you to you have to rephrase it. Could you, this is rubbish. I don't think this is the best way. You always have to think, is this the most basic way of saying what I want to say? And or is there a way I can say this as strongly as I want it to come across, but without any, offense and heat and fire inside what I'm saying? And that I think takes skill and coaching and or being aware, first of all, and yeah, looking for help, and it's an ongoing thing. I feel like I've always been conscious of tone, but till tomorrow, I'm always thinking, is there where I can tone this down? Sometimes I give something to my Oyinbo colleague to say, just help me look at it. And then by the time they make their own address, you say, oh, okay, it's just one or two words. And it actually brings the temperature of what you're trying to say down, but it still has all the gravitas that you're trying to attach to it. Yeah, it's immersion, it's practice, it's skill, it's being conscious of it, I think.
Yeah. I really like how you explain it, because I feel like, again, just repeating myself, we gloss over this so much. We don't take time to think about that code switching is not phoneh. Like that thing.
It's
Like
not.
for
It's
me, like
not.
that is the thing. Like it's not phoneh. It's
It's
not
not
picking up
phoneh.
the accent. That's not code switching.
Because sometimes, so it's not even about fight. I will say something in a way that my Nigerian, the voice in our head is always the voice in our head. In fact, I like to say that code switching chops bandwidth, because
Yes. Oh yes.
you will always think, first of all, in your native internal voice. You are then
Yes.
passing it through a filter or a translator to put it in a way that the people you are talking to will understand. So there's some things that, I will say, and I realize, okay, they're not understanding me or they're not getting me, because even though I've spoken clearly, I've phrased it in a Nigerian way. And this
Yeah.
is not about, so I know some people listen to this and be thinking racism, hierarchy, racial. It's actually not about that. It's the same way the Englishman comes to the pub in Nigeria, our bar in Nigeria, and wants to order something or ask something. And the person he's speaking to hears each English word, but as a phrase, what he's hearing is not what the foreigner is saying.
The Englishman.
You know? I, so,
Communication.
is not is well, one of the phrases that one of my old bosses in Nigeria used to, she had it as a signature to her email, was that the greatest illusion about communication is you think it has happened. But that's where the quote ends. But obviously the unsaid part is you can
It
be
didn't happen.
speaking, it didn't happen. You can be speaking good, perfect, grammatically correct English, but if the person you are speaking to doesn't understand, and again, yes, there are some people who, I haven't really experienced it too much, but I understand that it's a common experience that because you're a foreigner, sometimes people won't even be patient, to
Enough to,
to
yes,
to
yes, that
try to
happens. Yeah.
understand you. That absolutely happens. But like even as between us, man to man, There are some things that, as an Igbo person, you will say that the way it lands, maybe not necessarily to me, but to my parents as Yoruba people,
Will be very different, like
it will be
very
very,
different.
very different. That's why I'm assuming you're Igbo because your name is Dozie. So,
Yeah,
but
I'm Igbo actually. Yeah, I'm Igbo.
uh,
I'm Igbo actually. Yeah.
so it's not necessarily an interracial thing. It's just paradigms. Different communities have their codes, their way of speaking to each other, and I think a key part of settling after migrating is just learning how to speak, not phoneh, but arrange your words in the way that gives you the optimal results for your environment. Is how I would give that point.
Yeah, and I think that if someone sees it as talking about racism, I think then they probably don't really understand it because, like they say, there are things they call caches. Like so, each culture has caches,
Absolutely.
and within those caches are the unsaid rules and nuances. How it's communicated to you will define how you take it sometimes. So you can meet some
Yeah.
people who are just assholes and who make you feel like
Um,
you're less of a person.
yeah.
That is bad. But there are people who will help you explain that, like, this is not how this culture does things. And I think one important thing as an immigrant is kind of understanding that, like you see, you could call them, they're cultural paradigms that exist that are define how people behave and how things are done. And like someone said on my podcast, one I'm going to release very soon, she said something I keep thinking about. She says, it's so easy to say as an immigrant, they don't understand me. No, sorry, I don't. They don't understand me, or I don't understand them. But it's also they're on the other side. They too don't understand you. It's a two-way street. And so you assume if you're saying, "Oh, I don't like what they're doing," are you asking yourself if they like what you're doing? Like, maybe you're doing stuff that they don't even understand, and they're like, "What is going on here? I've not seen someone do this before," you know. And just kind of finding like a middle ground between both of you.
Yeah.
So both of you have to take steps forward, to kind of say, we'll come together and do that stuff. Because
Absolutely.
it's so easy to sit in our heads and say, this guy, they're not accepting who I am, they don't understand my culture, blah blah blah. Bro, lady,
Yeah.
there are two sides to this conversation.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are. And you know,
Yeah.
like even when you do become a citizen, we are just products of how we were raised. Is how I read in the
Oh
book
yeah.
somewhere ago
That's hard to change.
that you can't, no matter who you are, you can't disguise your handwriting. That is it's a thing. It's a scientific thing. That how you write, even if you try, it will still come out. And I think
Sure.
it applies to our conditioning and how we were raised. And again, I'll go to that voice, your internal monologue, how it sounds. It will not. It can evolve, right? But it has its own identity, and yes, it grows with you on the journey, and it can evolve, but it needs you to apply the effort to bring it along with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like if you like, I feel like what I hear you say to be there is that if you think you can wing it, you can't wing that thing
You'll be
because it means that
frustrated.
you're underestimating the power that internal native voice has over you. You're underestimating the power that the your nature and nurture. I mean, for example, like my
Absolutely.
child, I have a 7-year-old he moved here when he was 4. So with that person, I'm like, he's probably Canadian Nigerian. So he's very different from me. Even though I'm raising him, I'm a Nigerian Canadian, but I'm raising him. But he's very different from me because the culture I grew up in is not the culture he's growing up in. So when we grow up, like if you think we're like daddy and son are going to be very different individuals, which is just what immigration comes with,
they
you
they
know.
are. And as you pivoted to children, I have a perfect illustration here in our house. So I have 3 girls. two are teenagers, and the youngest is 10, should be 11 this year. We had the first two in phase one, so they were both born while we were here. So we moved back to Nigeria about 2 months after we had our second one. So she was in Nigeria as a baby. So the two of them grew up with, our Nigeria cooking. They had nannies who were in that Nigeria cooking. Their grandparents were there. They cooked that Nigeria way. And then we moved back here when the youngest was 3. She had barely started talking. So if you hear them talking, they don't really, I don't know, even the older ones, no, the phoneh no grew from for their mouth. Though. I don't know what's, that's not even that's not even the point. Though. The point is, the youngest, you can see that there's a stark difference in the way, compared to her older sisters, the way that she relates with us, the thing that she feels confident to say, the other two, and getting into teens and they're starting to challenge means that, okay, they are evolving into it. But at that age, when we first moved here, they were still very, deferring to your parents, Nigerian child upbringing way. And I think it illustrates that point you're just making perfectly, that we are Nigerians. A child that was 3 or 4 years old when they immigrated will probably be, I guess, more British or Canadian than they are Nigerian. I think the older you are when you move, the more of your parents or your native background you bring along with you. You carry, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I like I say, I call immigrants the in-betweeners. That's what I call them, and I'm like, so everybody's in between. Yeah, that's why I call them the
Yeah,
in-betweeners,
yes.
and so they're always in between somewhere. Even the kids are in betweeners themselves, but they're just a bit different from us. Like, so me, I'm in between, but I'm more Nigerian than Canadian. So, and I'm adjusting as I'm going along. My child is Canadian Nigerian. He's going in a
Yeah,
Nigerian home.
yeah.
He has Nigerian grandparents that come around. But he's Canadian.
But
Like
it's Canadian
so
first, yes.
he's Canadian first. Like that's the thing that is in his head. Like that's the thing that's the
Exactly.
society he's growing up in. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting. So I think the last question I have for you is: so do you have like a how to hit the ground running playbook for tone communication? Like, do you have like any or tips? Maybe like you're planning to move. Like, what do you do to start prepping yourself for the code switching you have to do? Because whether you like it or not, like if you're going to work here, if you're going to do anything here, if you're going to communicate, then you need to learn how to adjust. Like, so yeah, there like any tips, steps, and stuff.
Oof. I think maybe first of all, just being aware that the way we communicate naturally as Nigerians is different from, in fact, it's even different from the way
Mm.
other Africans communicate. It's how people will say when you're in South Africa, as soon as you walk in, somebody will just know
Yeah,
this person is a Nigerian. So
yeah,
the way we communicate as Nigerians isn't necessarily the way other people do, and we just need to be aware that we we can come across quite forcefully. One,
yeah,
uh, two. So being aware, I guess the question is then how do you dial things down? I don't think there's a ready-made answer. So I think, for example, in the office, find someone. And I know that it means you make yourself vulnerable to strangers. And I was going to say, find someone who,
mm,
for example, can just vet your emails before you send emails. So emails are probably the way we communicate the most in the office environment. And yeah, there's a missing part in the advice. Because how do you find somebody you can trust? It needs to be somebody that you can trust and be open and be a bit vulnerable with. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I find that just having someone, can you just let me check this for tone, is is, and if the person is an asshole, then yeah, you don't ask them again, right? But I think you need to ask for help sometimes. 3 again. I feel like it's hard for us to be our full selves at work, and that's probably like a whole different podcast topic.
Yeah.
Maybe one worth exploring is how much of your authentic self can you be at work, and I guess it depends on, well, how I don't know, maybe old or young you are. It's not about age, it's about your responsibilities and how stable you want to be. How stable you want your income and your environment. Do you want to be job hopping all the time? Do you want to be somebody that people are uncomfortable working with? And so before you know, they put you on performance improvement plan. Before you know, they've exited you from the company,
Fire
because
you.
your colleagues need to be comfortable with you. And that's not to say pretend, but it's really to observe culture and take your lead from the culture. So when we were in uni, there was one of the electives we did was anthropology, and part of a big part of anthropology is the observer participant thing, where you you just sit down in the community and just observe it first. Don't be too eager. Learn the ropes. Learn the language. Learn the cues. Learn the there's and perhaps a way not to be too eager. Again, because one of our inherent problems as Nigerians is that we avoid each other abroad and we get wahala. So I can understand people. Well, I was going to say the point I was going to make, and I derailed myself, was your community should not be exclusively people that have just arrived like you. I think it's a recipe. Seek people who have been around for longer. And not in, there was this video recently, a woman was like, we were not student visa, we have been here before Japan, we didn't Japan, we are not in that context, cause that bullshit. So, we did not Japan because of economy. No, that's nonsense, right? But just the okay. This is, I think I've landed on a good example. So I think social media has actually made finding this community thing a bit easier. And if you just spend a bit of time to curate your social media circle, I think it can be really fantastic. So coming back for this phase 2, coming back, there are a few friendships I had cultivated. People I thought, I can actually be friends with this person in real life, and they've been here doing well in their professions, well established. And as it looked like I was coming back, I'm like, okay, guys, this is happening, and okay, let's keep me posted, keep me posted. As I landed, come, let's go to lunch. And I'm talking to fellow lawyers, somebody, two of them were in finance, people who are actually living the kind of life that I wanted to live, as a professional person in this country. And it's just listening to their experiences. Yeah, just learning the cues. People who've done the things that you're hoping to do. And not in that student visa paradigm, not in that hi guys, here's 5 tips for getting it is. So, okay, at work today, this happened. How do you think I could have navigated it better? Or asking them, so how do you deal with this when you're at work? I think having that sort of landing pad was actually very good for me when I moved back for phase 2.
Yeah.
And I don't think I
It was a,
properly answered your question, because what you asked was, how do, but yeah, there's no shortcut. How do you prepare
Yeah,
yourself?
but I think that's the answer. Actually, I think that's the answer because really, you just summarized it with there's really no shortcut. There's just because what you've said is this is how I try to do it, and really that's all it is. It's a function of you have to kind of put in the work. And with something you said here reminded me of an article I read by David Perel. It's that the writing guy on Twitter, and he was a random thing. It was something about I forget the name of the article, but the theme was when you go to a place, don't act like a tourist. Act like a local. And what I started thinking about when you are explaining that thing about being too eager is that a lot of times when you come as an immigrant, you need to switch off the tourist hat. The tourist hat is the fact that you come and
Is
you're eager to experience everything. No, like you need to behave like a local. A local is okay. Like just calmly sit down and just observe. Like what are the things happening? What that does for you is that you start to see things that you wouldn't normally see. You talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. But that tourist mentality, if you adopt as an immigrant, then you struggle because you're in a hurry, you're trying to you're just moving and you get into places that you shouldn't get into yet, and you will struggle at those spaces, and you'll be like, "Why am I here? What am I doing here? I regret coming here." Blah 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 blah. But the fact was just simply you're a local now. You're not a tourist anymore. You don't have a return ticket. You're not just going to get up and get on a plane and go back because you don't like it. You're living here now, so behave like you live
yeah,
here. Yeah.
absolutely. I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
behave like you live here. But yeah. Thank you so much. This has been good. This has been a good class on code switching, to be honest, because I saw some mistakes I was making very well at that.
No, yeah, we're going to gawk. I think it's impossible not to gawk at first. It's impossible not to.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
It's
Oh
like learning to
yes.
walk. You fall a few times, and for somebody like me, you can obsess over your falls a bit too much. Or something I'm trying to work on. I did, yeah, I messed up. Pack it. You learn your lesson from it and move on. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just okay. So here's how they talk. Here's the most productive way or the most efficient way for me to convey this thing I want to convey. You know, um, yeah, learn. Have a learning mindset. Don't be too because again, and because we come. So those of us that I would say we emigrated in old age because we didn't do that. You didn't come to do secondary school or A levels,
School or
university, and then
university.
start working. You came as a
You're in a
fully
hurry.
formed adult. But yes, I suppose. But point I want to make is that when you first start working, a lot of the times your professional peers here will be much younger than you. Will be
Yeah.
will be people who you feel carrying your Niger swag that you
Hmm.
should be a few steps ahead of. And it can be disheartening at first, but I think they're also a great way to just learn the code. So if okay, fine, this is where they put me for now. It's temporary. We know we didn't come to Overs to count bridge or and thankfully nobody needs to watch
Yeah.
dead body like back in the dead body joke back in
Yeah.
the day. But um it's a great way to see what's expected of people working at that level, to see how they communicate to you know um superiors in the office. Yeah, and learn the corporate social cues or learn the workplace social cues. Yeah, there's nobody we can't learn from.
Yeah. Cool. 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 Thank you very much.
No worries, my pleasure. Was fun.
Honestly, thank you very much. Because I feel like again, I'm just saying it again, like we don't talk about this. We gloss over it. But it is extremely important. Let me use the mental health card. It's extremely important for your mental health.
It is.
because
Because
it is exhausting. It is exhausting, and then when you fail at it, you can feel like you're like, especially when you're much older, you're in a hurry, you're trying to quickly get going with the game and all that, and then you're stumbling through these things. You're like, well, what have I done to myself?
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's good to shine a spotlight on it, and be interesting to hear what the response is, and people's experiences, and whether any
Yeah.
of this sounds like what anyone else has gone through or is going through.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, man. What did you think about when Rotimi talked about the native voice? Yeah. That's something I think one needs to think about a lot. Like, what's your native voice and what does it say to you? But while you're thinking about that, thank you so much for getting to this point of the podcast. Have a beautiful day, and please like, share, send it to someone who might find this useful. See you at the next time around.